All right, she works in radio. She is a kickboxer, a reporter, a rising star in the MMA scene, and a jack of all trades. Maddie, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
I'm great, Matt. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. And to start this off, let's talk about you a little bit. Would you mind giving us a little background about how you got to where you are today, with the kickboxing, radio,
Yeah,
reporting? Just talk about yourself a little
absolutely.
bit.
Yeah. So, wow, I don't even know where to start really. So, I guess it all started when I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. I
Sure.
was about to graduate from the University of Rhode Island, and I knew I wanted to be in broadcasting in some capacity. Managed to get a really awesome internship at a country radio station in my town and started in promotions and then kind of worked my way over to the studio side, and that's when I realized I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. I definitely
Hmm.
want to be behind the microphone a lot. So I worked for free a lot. I listened, I learned, and I just kind of honed in on my skills and eventually worked my way up to the morning show there. Nowadays, I'm on a top 40 pop station in Massachusetts, and I'm loving it there. Fun 107, check it
Awesome.
out. And then in the midst of all of that, I had a really great friend. So let's see, I was about 21. So that was 8 years ago. And they said, I go to this martial arts gym. I think you'd really love it. And I made every excuse under the sun not to go.
Sure.
I was like, I don't really want to do it. I'm busy, that sort of thing. And she said, well, I can bring a friend for free. And I said, all right, well, now I got to go. Uh, so I went to the first class and I was immediately hooked after the first class. And I fully invested myself into it. And 6 months into it, I was fighting. And 13 fights later, here I am. And it's been such an amazing blessing to have been exposed to the martial arts world. My
Sure.
only regret is that I wasn't exposed earlier in life.
Yeah.
I got my start at 21. Um, and it's just been so much fun to just really invest myself into something that I think is bigger than myself. Martial arts world is it's you're always going to learn if you're doing it the right way. And then through that, I decided that I loved martial arts so much that I wanted to combine broadcasting and martial arts. So I started studying MMA a lot more because I'm primarily a K1 kickboxer, Muay Thai kickboxer. So I had the striking down. Um, but I started to do a lot more research in the MMA world, and I realized I loved telling the stories of fighters. So my style of reporting is doing a lot of storytelling, which I love. But now I have opportunities with commentary. I do a lot of commentary for CES MMA. So that's wonderful. And it's just been a crazy journey over the past 8 years. And I'm just excited to see where it continues to go because so far, so good.
Absolutely. No, that is a heck of a journey.
Yeah.
Truly a jack of all trades, like I said earlier. And I have two follow ups from that. One, you worked at country, you worked at pop. What's your go
Yeah.
to music?
Oh, yeah, that one's a tough one. So, when I started in country, the country station, I loathed country music. Hated it. Um, but then it did grow on me a little bit. But when
Sure.
I turn on a playlist, it's usually hip hop. But again, I'm like a jack of all trades with that. It's like it really depends on my mood. But yeah, I'm a big really into Jack Harlow right now.
Okay.
I've always been a Logic fan. Um, yeah, and then all of a sudden I'll put on like 311 and Dirty Heads. So
Sure.
it's like I'm just kind of all over the place.
No, I get that. And then my next follow up is, you with the combat sports experience you have, do you find that helps you relate to the people you're talking to, the people you're interviewing a little better and kind
Oh
of bring out another
yeah.
side in them?
Yeah, and I think that's something that I view as one of my strengths when it comes to interviewing a lot of fighters is I'm able to ask certain questions that a typical reporter might not consider.
Sure.
Um, I try to avoid questions like, so how are you feeling? How's the
Hmm.
weight cut? Like questions that they answer over and over and
Yeah.
over. And so I like to try and pull the stories out. So a lot of times I'll ask them how they even got started. And usually that's a wild story. Um, or, what are some of their what they think is weaknesses in the gym that they've been working on that us, watchers might not have noticed about one of their weaknesses. And then, I like to just ask them about just their life in general, what their life is like outside of the gym. And a
Sure.
lot of times they don't have much of a life out of the gym. But sometimes you'll get those gems. You'll get those interesting stories that you might not have gotten if you just like stuck to the script, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, kind of bring out like the human side of the fighters a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I'm a huge fan of humanizing fighters, and just showing them that there are people out there that can relate to their hard work and that are watching it from a critical view. And it's been cool to be able to use my experience in the ring in a commentary
Mhm.
light, because it's almost like, wow, I commentate these fights and I'm like, my stuff. This is exciting. Like it's nice to remember like all of that hard work. You can actually put it onto other outlets. Like instead
Mhm.
of me just like wrapping it up with my friends, now I get to share it with people on UFC Fight Pass, and it's I feel very honored to do that. So
Oh, that's a really interesting perspective. And as you're rising through the ranks, what is your ultimate goal in reporting?
it's funny. I always wanted to be, the next Laura Sanko or the next Megan O'Leary, that sort of thing. But as I continue to progress, it's hard to say what exactly I want out of this career, because as the fight game progresses, we're seeing this evolution of how MMA media is reported. You have Ariel Hawani, who's not even affiliated with the UFC, and he's
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest journalists in the game. So he proves the point that maybe UFC isn't the only option that MMA journalists have anymore. So, with that being said, having the UFC banner above or below me or wherever would
Mhm.
be amazing. But
Absolutely.
it's refreshing to know that the world of MMA is growing, which means that the broadcasting side is growing as well. So I'm really just keeping my eyes and ears open. I'm saying yes to basically everything and just really trying to immerse myself in this world and in this culture and create a name for myself. And hopefully it takes me somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. That's really cool. And my next question for you is, who's your dream interview?
Who's my dream interview? My gut reaction immediately was Sean O'Malley, only
Okay.
because that would probably be the silliest, weirdest interview. Like I feel like he would absolutely have stories
Oh
that
yeah.
people would want to hear.
thousand
He
percent.
comes to mind. Even like having an opportunity to interview Bruce Buffer or like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Like they're not fighters, but they've been in the game forever, and it would just be really cool to hear their side of things and to like kind of switch it up on them. Joe Rogan's always doing the interviews. Maybe it's time for him to be interviewed, type of thing.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's a good point. I like that idea.
yeah, but my gut reaction is Sean O'Malley. So Sean, holla at your girl.
So now let's move into your combat sports career a little bit. What's your end goal for combat sports?
I really don't have one. I got into it because my coach saw something in me and he said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You want to get in the ring?" And I said, "Absolutely." And then it was like a fire was lit in me that I didn't even know was there. And just that level of competition and how hard you have to work to even get in the ring was really exciting to me. And but when it came to the idea of becoming a professional kickboxer or even like transferring over to MMA, I always hesitated because I never really believed that I have the time that I think professional careers deserve to make that transition, because I was always so focused on my career and family and friends or whatever it was. I had a really big emphasis on my career, and the fighting was just something that I did for fun, which is like funny to say. Um, But I think at the end of the day, I just enjoy doing it. And when an amateur card pops up, I'm usually throwing my name in the hat. And when it comes to professional rankings, I think I'll leave my husband to do that. He's actually in karate combat. He's
Oh,
one of their
cool.
champions. So I'll let him do the professional fighting, and I'll just sit back and talk about it.
Do you do a little karate with them?
I don't. He is leaps and bounds ahead of me. We do a lot of pad holding together. We do a lot of training together. But when it comes to karate, oh my god, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like the whole I can do a pretty good side kick. But I'm trying to think of some other moves where it's like spinning axe kicks and tornado kicks and like that's I no. No, definitely not.
No, I feel that. Well, I bet you can do a whole lot better than me because I'm 6'4" and my hips don't move that way. So I don't think
Oh.
anybody would want me to do that. But yeah. So do you have a fight coming up anytime soon?
I do not. And I don't know if I'm going to be fighting anytime soon. My husband and we got married in November of 2021, and now we're kind of focusing on starting a family.
Oh,
So
very
that's
cool.
exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So, that's kind of trumping me getting back into the ring. I'm trying to think of when my last fight was. I think my last fight was April because I wanted to get one more in before we really focused on starting a family. So I think family's at the forefront right now, but you'll definitely see me, ringside, cage side, whatever it is, because I have FOMO, so I never want to miss out on fight nights. So
Yeah.
I'll usually be in the crowd.
That's really exciting.
Yeah,
So let's move into UFC 279 a little bit.
let's do it.
And let's start with Chimaev.
Okay.
I mean he it was an interesting weekend. Well, the whole event was crazy, but I
Yeah.
mean Chimaev turned heel. He missed weight. He flipped the bird to the audience. Then he fought Holland at 180 pounds, destroyed him. He looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
What do you make of that fight, and what weight class do you think Chimaev should fight at going forward?
Yeah, that one's a tough one. I mean, definitely goodbye to welterweight. No more. He has no business being a welterweight,
Right.
especially after the comments that he made about how he hates cutting weight and it's the worst part about it. And it's like, well, buddy, that's part of the fight game. So if you don't want to cut weight, maybe move up a couple weight classes. But
Sure.
I like the idea of him going to middleweight. I think he should be able to make middleweight. Um, I like the idea of him fighting Pereira.
Okay.
You know, I understand that Pereira and Adesanya has to happen first, but I think if Pereira loses, I think that's kind of the perfect matchup for Chimaev. Because I don't think Chimaev deserves a title shot just yet. One, I'm sorry, the dude has to be punished somehow for what he did. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like he didn't get any sort of reprimand, like
No.
slap on the wrist, maybe. But he basically showed everybody on the roster like, hey, yeah, I don't really have to follow the rules because they're gonna make it work. So I really did not like that at all. And for that alone, I'm like, all right, you don't deserve a title shot for a while because I think he needs to mature a little bit. Um, but if he's able to hang with somebody like Pereira, I think that goes to show that, he does mean business and maybe even give him Vittori if Pereira ends up winning, because again, I don't want him to have that title fight. And I think
Mhm.
I'm just bitter. But I think a lot of the MMA community is right now with
Yeah.
Chimaev. So I like the idea of him fighting Vittori as well. He just fought and hung with Whitaker, which I mean, that's hard for anybody. So I think it'd be a great test for Chimaev to see if he's ready for that title shot, if he's able to get it done. So Chimaev, tisk tisk tisk.
Yeah.
He's on my shit list.
Yeah. No, I get that, but the fun part is the UFC has a new bad guy.
Yeah.
It's always fun having a bad guy. passion's a good thing. Whether you like someone or you don't like it, it makes it extra fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think everybody's going to start tuning in a lot more to see Chimaev because, I mean, before people certainly liked watching him, but it was for different reasons. People were like, is this dude even human? You know, like getting things done. Best first round performer in the UFC. Absolutely. But now, yeah, like his story is starting to develop, and it's almost like he didn't even try. Like, well, first of all, he did not try to make weight, but it was very organic the way it all happened. Like, I think he really is totally fine with being the bad guy.
Yeah.
So I think there's a new bad guy in town. So yeah, you're right on that.
Yeah. So hypothetically, that matchup with Nate Diaz goes down. What does that look like?
Chimaev and Nate Diaz. Oh man. So the one thing I noticed about Diaz when he was fighting Ferguson was, I mean, he clearly did his homework on a grappler and a wrestler. He was exhausted on his feet. I don't think he was ready to be striking that much. I think he was fully banking on a wrestling bout. So I think it would have been a lot of wrestling. I think it would have been a lot of grappling. It would have started just like it did with Chimaev and Holland. I think Chimaev just would have pounced because that's what he does. But I think I would like to think it would have gone longer than Chimaev and Holland because I have a lot of faith in Diaz and his ground game and just him in general. But yeah, I think we would have watched a grappling match at a high level. What would have happened.
Yeah, no, for me, heading into that fight, it was like, I want Diaz to win really badly, but my gut was just telling me, Chimaev smash kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
I know. We'll never know. And it's like, oh, come on, man. But yeah, my heart was Diaz, but my brain was definitely Chimaev. Yeah. I'm still mad at him.
You know what? It might work out for the best for Diaz. Not as much damage taken in the fight, against Ferguson that he could have potentially had fighting Chimaev. And yeah, I mean, he is now going to be moving on to fight. Well, likely he insinuated that he's going to be going over to boxing. Yeah. And he's going to take on Jake Paul potentially. We'll get into that in a second. But let's stick on Chimaev for one last topic. Hypothetically, I'm not saying this is feasible at this point. Hypothetically, Chimaev can make welterweight. What does he do to those top contenders in the welterweight division?
Purely hypothetical, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think he runs through everybody. I do
too, unfortunately.
I mean, that Gilbert Burns fight that he had was incredible for a lot of reasons. I mean, it showed how good Burns is, but it also showed that Chimaev means business. He's not a one-trick pony. He's not gonna gas out after round number 1. And he showed round to round in that Burns fight that he evolves, that he listens to his corner, that he is willing to put in the work to get that win. Like, Burns did not make that easy for him.
No.
And if anything, it showed that he is human. But at the end of the day, it even illustrated even more just how good Chimaev is. And I think if he were to stay in the welterweight division, he would have eventually become the champion. But he doesn't deserve to be in that division anymore. So no more.
No. And if you're really that bad, like if you're as bad as you say you are and everyone says you are, don't kill your body to fight smaller guys.
Right. What's the point?
Fight at your natural weight. Fight middleweight.
Right. Agreed.
So, yeah, let's move to the main event now. So, that was a really interesting fight, to say the least. One interesting part was Diaz. I don't know if he got cut in his face at all, which was strange. Him and Ferguson were incredibly cordial. And then Diaz is just like talking to the commentators mid-fight.
That was the weirdest thing, was watching him. I believe it was all in round 3 of him just like taking it off. Just like, I'm exhausted and I'm going to just walk around and lean on the cage, and like, so
Ferguson wasn't even pouncing. It was like,
that's the weirdest part to me. And it's like, were both of them that tired, or were both of them just like, whatever. Like, we're here, we're fighting. We weren't even sure if we were gonna fight. Like, whatever. Like, I really couldn't tell. They certainly, like, Diaz certainly looked exhausted from round 1, which was very odd to me. Ferguson looked good at the beginning of each round and then just kind of faded out after that. You know, he had his moments. He had the really great leg kicks and that sort of thing, but that was really it. But yeah, that whole break thing was so weird, and I couldn't help but notice the crowd. The crowd didn't really seem to care. Like, they were like still rooting him on and they were still cheering
Yeah.
him on, and I kept thinking, I was like, if this was any other fighter, the crowd would be so
Yeah.
pissed right now.
Yeah.
But because it was Diaz, they were like, "Oh, he can do whatever he wants. It's fine. It's fine. This is great."
1000%.
Like, it's such a weird fight.
Yeah, no, the Diaz army is real.
Oh
And
yeah.
let's talk about Ferguson for a second. What do you think should be next for Tony?
You got to be done, bud.
Okay.
It's done. Like, you got to do it. I just it hurts. It pains for me to say this, but all roads lead to retirement, and I think he is crawling his way to retirement at this point. Um, Not to downplay his legacy, because he will go down in history as one of the best fighters in the
Yeah.
UFC, but to end this way, to end with loss after loss after loss, that can't feel good, you know?
Mm,
And like, MMA fans have a really short attention span. They have really short memories, and you're creating this image of yourself in a lot of MMA fans that you aren't the best.
mm,
Where, you know, a lot of the OG fans or like the diehard fans are going to remember who Ferguson is, but these, like, I guess maybe like the general mass population or people that forget, like, they're going to consider Ferguson not as good as he is. So I think, and he strikes me as a guy where you're going to have to like pull him out of the cage kicking and screaming. I don't
yeah.
think he's going to willingly retire. I think it's going to be one of those things where he's going to have a conversation with Dana. But like, what do you even do with him at this point? Who does he fight now?
See,
Um,
I'll play devil's advocate for a second. He it's hard for me to say just go off and retire when, you know, he had the courage to step into a fight he wasn't planning for. I believe his original fight was set for 3 rounds, I think,
mhm.
and it was a 5-round fight.
Yep.
It's just it's tough for me. And like you said, he had his moments. At the very least, I'd like to see him have a fight that's winnable. You know, have one more fight, and hopefully they can send him on a good note. Hopefully, he can get like his, you
Yeah.
know, his Diaz moment. What Diaz just did, something similar
Right.
for him.
And I would agree that he deserves that. I think he would deserve a good not homecoming, but going away party, I guess.
Yeah,
What do you call that? Retirement fight, I guess. Where you feel confident that he's going to win it. I think Ferguson certainly deserves that. Um, but as far as what he's going to do next, I think that's the question of who is the perfect last fight for him,
yeah,
and not necessarily how do we keep Ferguson in the rankings. Like,
yeah.
I think that conversation is null and void.
Moving back to Nate Diaz, we talked about it briefly earlier, but he's likely going to be moving to boxing,
Mhm.
and there's a good chance he takes on Jake Paul. But before Nate Diaz, actually, we got Anderson Silva taking on Jake Paul, another MMA legend.
Yeah.
What do you think of that fight?
You know, I spent a lot of time hating Jake Paul, and I spent a lot of time being one of those MMA fans or fight fans that was like, he has no business being in there. He's just a YouTuber. He's doing it
Yeah.
for all the wrong reasons. But if you really pay attention to Jake Paul and you really pay attention to the evolution of Jake Paul, he takes it pretty seriously, and
Oh yeah.
he trains really hard, and it's something that he really wants to do in life, I feel. And I commend him for constantly looking for fights and
Hmm.
speaking up about fighter pay and speaking up about, you know, the fighting community in general and how we deserve better and that sort of thing. And he doesn't have to say any of that. He could have easily taken the McGregor route and been, you know, an asshole, because who likes Jake Paul? Nobody. He could have easily been the bad guy, but he's choosing not to be in some aspects. So on that level, I commend him. And I commend him for signing on the dotted line against somebody like Silva, who, I mean, absolute legend.
Yeah.
Like, GOAT, you know? Like, if he wins against Anderson Silva, I think that is a huge testament to just how hard Jake Paul works. I think it's a huge testament to just how serious he's taking it. And I think it could be I don't know. It's hard to say because I have so much faith in Anderson Silva. How can you not? But I had a lot of faith in Tyrone Woodley too. So I don't know.
Sure. For me, I think Anderson might be a little more technical, but
Yes.
Anderson, uh, he might outpoint Jake and be up on the scorecards, but the concern's got to be, how does the 47-year-old chin handle a dude who's 25 who can really
Right.
crack? If Jake lands that clean shot on a chin that's had over 40 MMA fights and boxing
Yeah.
fights, I mean, well, what's that going to look like?
Well, I think the key here is Paul has never experienced a level of striking before that Anderson Silva possesses. And not only the striking, but the footwork.
Mm,
Silva, if he is at his best, he's not going to be standing toe to toe with Jake Paul. He's going to be in and out.
yeah,
He's going to be constantly moving. And like you said, he's going to be pointing. I think what happened with a lot of other Paul fights was they were so focused on knocking his head off and like, I hate this dude, I'm going to knock him out, that they forgot about all of the nuances of boxing. Like, sometimes it's not about let me just knock his face in. You
sure.
gotta like knock down the tree first,
Yep.
And I think that's something that Anderson Silva won't be afraid to do because I mean he's like I said, he's a legend. So he
Yep.
understands the game. He understands that like you have to knock down the tree first before getting that big knockout. So I have the utmost faith in Silva, but at the same time, I'm coming around to Jake Paul, and I commend him for um, just keeping at it amidst all of the hate that comes his way.
Yeah. Yeah. And if he gets past Anderson, he's likely going to fight Nate Diaz.
Yeah,
How do you think that goes?
I think that's extremely entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Be huge.
I don't think Nate Diaz gets knocked out. I never see Nate Diaz getting knocked out. I think it would be a bloodbath if Nate Diaz doesn't finish him. Um, but then you also have Mike Perry calling out Nate Diaz recently. I don't know if you saw that,
Oh, I have not.
but Mike Perry called him out recently, and I'm like, okay, maybe Diaz goes to bare knuckle, fights Mike Perry. That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that's the fight to make. Um, if Nate Diaz so chooses, but if Diaz were to face Paul, my money's on Diaz all day. I mean, it has to be right. I mean, to say Jake Paul would beat Nate Diaz, it's like blasphemous. I can't say that.
So, yeah, moving back to UFC a little bit. We talked about the welterweight division a little bit before, but yeah, who do you think should get the first shot at Leon Edwards? Do you think it should be Kamaru
Mm.
Usman right away, or is there anybody else you would like to see fight him?
I try to look at the trends of the UFC, and I feel like Usman would probably be the first guy they call. Usman probably wants that rematch immediately. I would if I was Usman. I mean, he was winning the majority of that fight, and yeah, he made a mistake and he lost absolutely. But I think I see the rematch. But give it to Covington. Why not? They've never fought before, and with the rankings in mind, he's technically next in line.
Yeah.
And about a person you love to hate, I mean, Covington always makes headlines interesting, whether you love him or hate him. So I think that would be a great fight. And Edwards, just getting his black belt, that's really exciting. So I'm sure he's going to be up for Covington's ground game, his wrestling game. So I like that matchup as well. I think either Covington or Usman makes the most sense.
Next, another heel, John Jones, maybe making his return pretty soon against potentially Francis Ngannou. How do you think that match would, or that fight would play out?
I mean, I can't stand John Jones. Can't stand him. And as a journalist, I shouldn't say that. I know that. Um, can't stand him. But I'd be ignorant if I didn't commend his skill level. I mean,
Yeah,
he's an incredible fighter. Regardless of what happens outside of the cage, when he's inside of the cage, he's an incredible fighter.
yeah, he is.
And so is Ngannou. But the problem I have is I hate this idea of somebody who has been inactive being able to just hop right in there and get a title shot immediately doesn't sit well with me. I think it's a huge slap in the face to all of the fighters that have been extremely active in the division. Granted, I understand that John Jones has a huge stake in the game. I understand that he brings those pay-per-view numbers and all that. But to me, it's like you have all of these fighters who are more than willing to go for the title, who have been working their ass off and haven't been being idiots outside of the cage.
Yep.
Shouldn't they deserve a title shot before somebody like John Jones? But with that being said, if it were to be Jones versus Ngannou, that'd be a crazy fight. It'd be crazy. Ngannou is a force to be reckoned with. And who knows what John Jones has been up to? Who knows? Like, who knows if he's even been training seriously or not? I'm sure if he were to be fighting Ngannou, you would hope he would be seriously training. But you also hear murmurs of Miocic and Ngannou. So maybe it's not John Jones. But again, the return of John Jones going to be a huge, huge moment for sure.
Yeah, it is. No, you make some really good points there. Like 1,000%. There's fighters who probably deserve it a lot more than him at this point. But as a fan, I want to see that fight.
I know.
That'd be unreal.
It's like, well, as a viewer, definitely want to see that.
Yeah, well, that's all I got for you right now. I have one more round I'd like to do, a little rapid fire round. I'll give you a bunch of questions and just answer them in a timely fashion. All right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. What was your favorite interview so far?
The Ben Askren.
Favorite food?
Spaghetti.
Dogs or cats?
Cats. I have two. They're the best.
Okay. You're the first one to answer that, I believe. But favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Oh no. Why does Billy Madison come to mind? That's weird. Okay, we'll go with that. Billy Madison.
Okay. Dream matchup for you to fight?
Oh, for like myself?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess if you got to go big or go home, Tiffany Van Soest is one of my all-time favorite Muay Thai fighters. So, and kickboxing fighters. So Tiffany Van Soest.
Okay. What's your ultimate dream match as a fan?
As a fan. Ooh. I would love to see Shevchenko and Nunes again. I really liked their, not trilogy, but I guess their back and forth. And I think Shevchenko was like one of the very few people to put it on Nunes. So that's the one.
Okay, and outside of combat sports, what's your favorite sport to follow?
God. I'm a nerd. I think it's really just MMA.
Okay.
Favorite sport? Baseball. I like baseball. Fenway Park is like one of my favorite places in the world.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. And then lastly, what's your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving. I mean, come on. The food, the family, the drinks. Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Maddie, for coming on the show. It was a blast having you on. Best of luck on your rise in the MMA media world. And looking forward to staying connected.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Love the show. It was a pleasure to be on it. So thank you so much.